The fact that you signed up for HEX Ed tells me you're not somebody who wants to stay at this level. Hi guys.
In business, there is a perception that I think you need to be a bit of a dickhead, and hopefully I can say that and they don't beat this out. Should I start again? I have no idea what I'm saying.
It's about using the resources you have to make the world a better place.
It's going to sound very, very, very weird.
Oh, so cringe.
We're going to meet so many interesting people, and I just can't wait. Hello, welcome to CE-only Fans. I am Jeanette Cheah, and this is Jodie Imam. Hi, Jodie.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. It's nice and warm in Melbourne today, 38 degrees and going up higher. So anyone who's in Melbourne, I hope you're staying hydrated. And anyone who's not in Melbourne, good for you. Although, yeah, weather seems to be crazy around the world. You didn't come here to talk about the weather. Let me introduce my guest. Jodie Imam is the incredible co-founder and co-CEO of Tractor Ventures and has been around the startup space since about 2011, would you say, Jodie, when you were building out your own startup, and she's been mentoring, she's been building community, she's worked with women founders in particular, and she's just helping to create this wonderful community of people that are building startups here in Australia. So Jodie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, let's start, with an overall introduction. Do you want to just tell us, what are you doing today? Like, what's your today job over at Tractor Ventures, and what does Tractor Ventures do?
Okay, yeah, sure. So I'm co-founder and co-CEO. So Matt Allen is my other half of CEO land. And then April Allen, our other co-founder, is our COO. There is 17 of us in the team now. We exist to unlock possibilities for founders. And so we're doing that with non-dilutive funding and also a whole lot of advice through our village and our community. And so, yeah, that basically looks like a loan that you can use to fund some growth in your business, and importantly, not sell shares too early, because selling shares is very expensive. And we've learned that along our journey. We talk about rockets and tractors, and rockets are very exciting, and some of them land on the moon, but they're also very expensive, and a lot of them blow up along the way. And so we like the tractors who are just working really hard, doing a really great job. If you said to a farmer, I'm sorry, I'm going to take your tractor away now, she or he's probably most likely going to be very upset. And this is the sort of software that our founders are making to help their customers really solve some big problems. So we've funded 80 businesses now. We've deployed over $25 million in the last 2 years. So yeah.
Goodness. I mean, it's incredible traction. And I think I love that analogy of, if I take a farmer's tractor away, they're not going to be thrilled. And such a good analogy, the kind of tools and software that people should be building to stay relevant and to just, keep their customers really happy.
Yeah.
Now, Jodie, you just came off the back of, we were just talking before the stream started, but you did something last night. Do you want to tell us what that was and what that was all about?
Well, it was kind of like I feel like it was my first stand-up comedic performance. It was Gaz and Josh's fuck-up nights in Melbourne, and it's the first one they've done for a few years, and I was telling the audience about some of my many fuck-ups, so it was a lot of fun.
I think, I definitely love, one of the things I love about this particular industry being the startup space is we are often very vulnerable and open about things that we've done and things that we've learned. And I don't think I would be where I am without hearing other people's fuck-up stories and knowing that I'm not alone in making mistakes on a regular basis. I don't know if anyone out there can relate to that feeling. Mm-hmm. But Jodie, do you want to tell us a little bit about, you're a co-CEO, so I'm going to start right there. How does that work? Because I think sometimes people think about the concept of being a CEO and you're the boss and you have to make all the decisions, and you and Matt share the roles. So how did you come up with the concept, and how does it work?
Yeah, great question. I think when we started, Matt and I were chatting before we launched, and he kind of said, so he was CEO, and so he said, well, call yourself whatever you want. And I said, okay, well, I'll be COO. And he's like, so what do you think you're going to do? When we get started, I'm like, I don't know, I don't know, maybe get the HubSpot, get some processes happening. We really just didn't know where we were going to start. And then we just had a huge amount of interest. So we very quickly got moving on, just building all the stuff and just doing our natural thing, I think. And so we have only just recently retitled ourselves in April, and she says it really well. It's like we've finally got the right name badges on. Like we were kind of already doing this role, but just probably didn't have the right titles. And so for Matt and I, like, he's really good at being out there in the ecosystem. He's great with our investors and raising capital and working with our institutional debt providers and that sort of piece. And then my role is more looking after our people, our customers internally, as well as being a bit of evangelist as well. So things like last night, and I'm naturally a bit of a sales person, so I sort of have a bit of a hunter hat on as well. Mm.
And it's interesting you described that role split like that, because I often think, I think I must have saw a tweet a while ago. I don't remember who tweeted it. So if you know the creator, tag them in the comments. But they said that the CEO has 5 jobs, right? It's come up with the strategy, get the people to deliver the strategy, get the money to do the strategy, communicate the hell out of it, and then hold people accountable. And it sounds like you and Matt have like beautifully split those kind of 5 key things like across the two of you, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, we're lucky. We haven't had to think hard about it. It's just what we're just, and I guess that's our culture attractor as well. We just want everyone to be in their genius zone as much as possible. And of course, not every single role, you just love every part of it, but where we can, we want everyone just like being in their total genius zone. So they just are thriving in what they're doing.
Yeah. And when you say like, how do you know, like as a professional, how do you know you're in your genius zone? Like what are the signs when you're like, oh yeah, this is it?
It's funny. Last night, Christy Jenkins actually was talking about that. There's a grid, and I'm not going to get this right, but it's that unconscious awareness. Like it's sort of this. It's a journey you go on, unconscious incompetence, and then you get to conscious competence. Yes. That one. And so I think it's a lot of trial and error until you just naturally, and then I guess you get to a point where you know something about what you're doing, and that you're doing it to like a level that's good, and that you feel good about it as well. So yeah.
I think so much of being a founder is being consciously incompetent. Like, you know, you're trying to do something and you know you're not doing it amazingly. Yeah. And at some point you're going to go, okay, this bit I figured it out. So maybe for me it was, I don't know, communications with the team. Like I think I figured out how to do that well. And then other things, it's like, oh gosh, now I've got to lean into the metrics and make sure I'm getting better at that. Exactly. And I think we often think when we're leaders, we have to figure it all out at the same time. But how do you do it? How do you sort of think about, you know, growing into new areas of your role or of your professional life?
Yeah, I think for me this year, so we sort of got the new titles towards the end of last year. So for me, I've sort of come into the new year wanting to, I mean, my natural skills are kind of in people management. I think naturally I can lead by example, and I can be amongst the team, but also be inspiring and motivating and that sort of thing. And so for me, I want to put some more professional rigor around that natural ability. And so I'm partnered with our general partner in New Zealand, who is a PX, a people experience professional, and so she's been doing this her whole career for tech startups. So we're meeting once a week, and she's helping just put some of that that process and some of those, you know, we've even got some technology tools that can help, you know, really add another layer. So yeah, this year I'm all about serving our people as well as our customers and community, but mostly our people, so that they feel really empowered.
I love that. And I've never actually thought about PX as like being a role, like people experience. And by the way, I just want to say hi to everyone who's dialing in. I think we've got people from Adelaide, from Melbourne, Hobart, all the way down to Hobart. Nice to see you here. And thank you so much for like grabbing your lunch and spending some time with Jodie and I. It's great to see you guys. And if you do have questions for either myself or Jodie, like please drop them in the chat. We do want to make sure we're giving you as much value for your time as possible. But okay, so while everyone's thinking about their questions, I'm going to ask you, Jodie, what do you think are the key traits and characteristics of like your CEO style? So you said you're serving your people this year.
Yeah.
What kind of style, like what's your leadership style?
Yeah, so I reckon it's like super people focused. I think sometimes I talk to other execs and they're like, oh, I can't get my job done because I've got all these people problems. It's like, that is the job. Really, like, working with the people in your team is the job. I love to lead by example. I think that I'm very empathetic and vulnerable, and so that I hope, and I like to sort of get in. I think as a CEO, you have to kind of lift above the weeds a little bit, but I also like to be in them a little bit too. So I'm working with the team. So like every week I'll be on a sales call. Every week I'll be on a village call. Like I just love being part of the team, not someone over the top.
I have to say I completely relate to that. I love to just get into the detail, and especially when I'm feeling a little bit out of my depth, I'll go and do something really micro, like I'll write a caption for social media, which is not actually, it shouldn't be my job, but it's like something that makes me feel happy and comfortable. But that constant challenge of like what's happening on, day to day, and then this strategic piece.
Yes.
But I think, as someone who's worked with you, Jodie, I can definitely say you are very empathetic. I think that's one of your key strengths as a leader, and it just makes people love working with you. So I'm keen to hear what other people's personal strengths are as well. If you've got some reflections on your own leadership style, I'd love to hear what you've got to say in the chat as well. Oh, and you've got some fans, Jodie. Marina said she saw you last night on stage, and Shilpi's dialing in from Dallas, Texas. So great to see everybody here.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Okay. And so what are you've founded now 2 startups, both Tractor and Occasional Butler, and you had 1 exit already. Mm-hmm. Do you think you could summarize like the top 2, 3, 5 learnings from that experience? That's a big question, but
well, I answered it last night, so it's very fresh. We also started a co-working space. So we started
yes, 3.
But that's not really a startup, I suppose. It's more of a small business. But I think my lessons, and I told this fuck up story last night about just how we kind of didn't even know what startup was actually. But when we started this thing in 2011, we thought we were running a small business, but we wanted to build a platform. So actually, it was technology based. But we thought, build it and they will come. And that's what we did. Like, we just focused only on building it, didn't talk to a customer, just, and learned the very hard way how badly that can go in the early days of the business. So for me, it's definitely focusing on the customer, and that's what we're, really embodying at Tractor now. It's just constantly talking about our customers. Also testing and iterating on everything. Like, we're getting ready to scale at Tractor, but we will just try things. So let's just try this, try that, and measure it. And if it doesn't work, doesn't matter. Like, we're going to launch a new product next week. And, we talked about it just this week. Like, should we just keep sort of testing it, or should we announce it? And the decision was, well, it doesn't matter. Like, we can announce it, we can give it a go, and if it doesn't work and in a year's time we don't have that product anymore, that's what technology companies are about, right? Like, we tried it, it's not a good fit, it's not helping customers, therefore we're not focusing on it.
It goes off the roadmap.
Yeah, so just that constant testing, iterating, customer feedback, that classic lean startup. Mm-hmm. Getting advice, getting it early, getting it always. And then big one for me, and it ties right into why we do Tractor, is just planning out funding. I talk to so many founders, and I was guilty of it. And it's, you really only mostly focus on that current capital raise. Like, how much am I going to sell? How much money am I going to raise? What am I going to do with it? How much am I going to sell my company to? And don't think about what's going to happen in the next raise, and the one after that, and the one after that. And maybe it's better to have a mix of different funding so that you can preserve that dilution as you go through. Because if you dilute too much, then you actually lose ability to raise. Investors just don't want to invest anymore, because you'll end up with no skin in the game, and then they know you're not going to want to drive the business. So
that's interesting. And I think that it's perfect timing for me to hear that as well, because I'm currently thinking about our 2023 raise, and I think a few people on the call might be thinking about their current raises as well. And just to that reminder about, it's not just about today, it's about 2 years time, 5 years time, the Series B, the series, like what's coming next.
Yes,
such a
what do those future investors want to see? And if you want to exit the business, what does that look like? Who's that going to be that you're selling the business to, or listing it? Or, what's the ultimate plan? And of course, you don't know. Like anything can change, but sort of having an eye to it, I think, is really important.
Yeah, it's funny actually. One of the HEX company values is eye on the future, and we sort of say like we keep our eyes on the future because we're 3 steps ahead, because that's where our customers or where our learners need us to be. But maybe it's also in the context of that's where our investors need us to be as well.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like this is turning into a Jeanette mentoring session, so I'm going to keep going. You're very, your approachable nature. I was going to actually ask you about the concept around getting advice and getting it early and getting it all the time.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, like, from as a leader yourself, you're very experienced now, do you still seek out that kind of advice? Where do you go to find people to help you?
100%. So immediately I'm going to Kirsty, our PX expert internally, as a coach, but I kind of think I've got my radar out as well to talk to others. Like Don Pym last night was incredibly inspirational, and he has made me think even bigger than I normally think, because he just thinks about, like, who do I want to talk to? Let me tweet. Let me reach out to Elon Musk. I need to have him sort of on my board.
Why not? I mean,
So always looking at that. Who's trodden this path a little bit before me. And, and sort of seeing if I can, and most people want to help. We talked about this last night as well. Like if you reach out for some specific help to someone, most likely they're going to be happy to help.
Yeah, that's true, actually. And I think I often say to people as well who are becoming mentors for the first time, you only need to be a couple of steps ahead of someone to be the most valuable.
Exactly.
You don't need to be 10. So if you're looking for a mentor, like, you don't have to have someone who's like a C-level at a big bank. Like, you could just have the person who's in the senior product manager role, because that's what you want to do next.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Now I'm going to get to these questions. So thank you so much for dropping them in, because they're great questions. This first one from a LinkedIn user. Do you have any advice about how to get the good ideas out of your head and into productive workflows? I mean, you are COO, and I know you do a lot of the operationalizing of things at Tractor. So how do you take it from here into reality?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's hard. I think for me, what's worked is breaking it into small bites. Like a big idea, it becomes overwhelming. And for me, I just procrastinate. And so I have to just break it down into smaller pieces and then, be able to figure out. I think it's really important to think, like, you don't have to solve everything yourself. Like, and you can't, you're definitely not going to have all the skill sets. So it's breaking it into small pieces and then thinking, what's the skill set I need to help me process flow this, and then reaching out to those people, or reading about it, or listening to a podcast, or whatever it is, so that you surround yourself with a group of minds, not just your own.
Yeah, so 2 really good pieces of advice. So break the big thing down into something really bite-sized, and if you've identified a skills gap, go and close that gap as much as you can through learning.
That's it. And you don't have to hire people to close the gap. There's many ways you can close the gap. It could be a mate. It could be a podcast, whatever it is. Yeah.
And that's actually one of the biggest education trends that we see, is this just-in-time learning. We know employers are looking for people that know how to do just-in-time learning or just-in-the-moment learning. So it's actually, weirdly, the ability to close your own gap is in itself a skill that people are looking for. So anyway.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, bit meta there. Okay, I've got another lovely LinkedIn user who has got a Tractor-specific question, and they're actually wondering about whether Tractor focuses on hardware and SaaS. Like, what kind of verticals are you looking at?
Yeah, so SaaS, we talk about recurring revenue, but we'll actually consider all revenue. So a lot of our customers, they've actually had a traditional business model where they might have done some consulting work and that kind of thing, but through that process and working with customers, they've identified a way to productize, and so then they've moved to a SaaS model. And so the Tractor funding is actually, that's a really popular use case to use this short-term cash to transition into that product style business. And then once you've got that product style business, you can go and sell shares if that's what you want to do. It's easier. And hardware, yes. So that's our hot off the press news we're launching next week. Yes. So we've been trialing this. We've worked with 9 companies to loan against inventory and hardware. So basically, if companies need to make stuff and then they're not going to get paid until they deliver it, there's that funding gap there. So we're working with lots of different startups and companies on that, which is very exciting.
That's so exciting. I mean, I know 2 specific startups straight up who I know could use that support because they're looking to build physical things, and I'm sure that they've already contacted you. If they haven't, I'll send them your way.
Amazing.
Very cool. And I think that's good to, that interesting model around transitioning from service-based or that kind of model to product. Like that's kind of where we were as a company as well when we came to Tractor to work with you guys, because a lot of our things were selling our time. So my physical presence in a place, or my colleague Jacqueline's physical trip to Singapore, like all of this stuff got such a ceiling on it. You can't do it all the time, and you certainly can't scale to the size that I want to scale to. So that was the time that we came to you as well. So thank you for that.
And also, you were in that real pivotal point where the pandemic shook up that business model.
Gosh. Yeah. It's hard to sell a travel-based business when the borders are closed. You can't leave. But I mean, you also had to deal with that pivot, and I guess you had a different experience with Depot 8. Like, I don't want to bring up traumatic memories, but you had a pretty rapid shutdown of a space that you'd been working in for about 7 years. And for anyone in Melbourne, if you know Revolver, it was like the space in Revolver.
It was next to Revolver. It was called Depot 8. It was around the corner from Revolver. But yeah, I was talking about this last night, where it was the failure in that. I was trying to draw a failure out of it because it was actually a very profitable, successful business for 8 years. And then the pandemic hit and we had to close it. But before that, we were thinking to sell it a few years earlier. And when we started getting sort of a feel for how much we could sell it for, it was especially me, like I thought it's just not enough. I don't want to sell it for that. We're still making profit. Don't want to do it. That was the mistake. I should have sold it then, because a year or 2 later we did look to sell it and we found a buyer, and the contract for sale was done. And then our landlord actually put the rent up by 80%.
Damn.
That killed the deal, obviously. And then 2 months later, the pandemic hit. So it was pretty crushing. And we we had to just make a very brutal, fast decision. But we shut it down in March 2020, which was awful. But still to this day, I'm glad we made the quick decision on that, because we still would be struggling to make money 3 years later. It's just
and you can only really make the best decision with the information you've got to hand, right? I think sometimes you pass on an opportunity and you kick yourself in the future, but you didn't know, and you weren't at the top of your curve yet. So, I think we do what we can.
Right.
And
that's where it sort of comes back. That's where it sort of comes back to having a bit of a plan and thinking out about the exit when you start. Like for us, we just were so excited about the start and what we're going to make and how good it was going to be, and never thought about like how we should end the thing, either selling it or not or whatever. So
that's so interesting. And I think a lot of us, especially in like people in early stage, you almost don't ever, you think that this is my life's work, I'm going to do it forever, but businesses have a lifespan and they have got cycles and things change. So unless you're McDonald's or like sort of low elasticity things like petrol, which, although maybe that's got a lifespan too.
I think what lasts is the entrepreneurial spirit, not the business itself.
Yeah, that's so true. So there's some great questions coming through. So thank you for everyone asking. One of the questions is actually, is there a social problem or like a social impact thing that's close to your heart?
Yes, there are. I'm super passionate about empowering women. That's something that just, from a young girl, I was very fiercely independent and created my own financial independence, which has served me very well my whole life. And so I'm very passionate about trying to help other girls and women find that independence. And so that taps into sort of domestic violence, homelessness, entrepreneurship, that's broad. It's a big area. And that's probably my passion zone.
Absolutely. And I know you personally do a lot of mentoring for women in business. And do you think that that's the kind of thing, as CEO or co-CEO of Tractor, could you see you using that position to kind of help to address these issues using the power of your business? Like, how do you think about that?
I do think about that. Like, I think if you can, and a lot of questions last night as well about how do I find this and how do I do that? And whilst it's cringeable, especially for women, to put yourself out there and be on a platform, you know, I still, like I said it last night, I got up on stage, I felt very nervous and I feel like I'm taking up too much space and time and, you know, like it's really hard. But I think if you do get your voice out there, then you can actually have an impact and help. So, yeah, it's a tricky
That's such a relatable message for those of us who feel like, you know, who gave me the right to stand here? Who gave me the right to say anything? Yeah. Nobody wants to hear from me. Yeah, like,
I was actually going to put my timer on because I didn't want to take any more than my allocated time that Gaz had said.
And I bet you just like couldn't stop getting questions, which is the same here actually. So I know that. So Christine, thanks for your great question, and I love that you sort of mentioned your. Sorry, I know it's not a question, more of a comment, but this concept of getting your landing page out and getting an MVP out straight away. So Jodie, you talked about experimenting and learning. How would you sort of approach a brand new idea these days?
Yeah, get it out. Just get it out. I spent a year building a cage of butler before we got it out, and then learned the hard way. We'd built the wrong thing. So, yeah, I've got two sons at the moment. One, I've always had them, but at the moment they're both launching. They're both launching a website, and so it's, you know, it's. They don't know what they're doing at all, 13 and 11, but it's just like it's out there. So yeah,
cool. One of my friend's little boys has started a dog treat business, and he's just dehydrating like chicken breasts, but he's made his own stickers and he's made an Instagram page, and I think the kid's 9 or something like that. But I just love that there's, you know, when you're young, you're just like, well, what's the worst that can happen? You know? That's
right. Well, they're still pretty scared, but I'm forcing them. I feel like if they can build this muscle now, then be good. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's why we get along. That's what we try to do, you know, with people around the world. Yes. Now there's another specific Tractor question. So hopefully you don't mind us bouncing a little bit between, you know, Tractor and yourself. But is there a sweet spot for the kind of startups that should work with either you personally or with Tractor?
I've definitely got a strong focus on women founders. So I've only got so much capacity. So probably that would be unfortunately my focus for sorry men out there that I'm sure are doing amazing things. At Tractor, we want to talk to all founders. Like our mission is to unlock possibilities for founders. So, you know, we talk about technology companies, but, you know, e-commerce, any sort of tech enablement is someone that we want to be able to help. We really want to move the needle with our ecosystem, you know, and help drive that sort of innovative Australia.
Yeah, I mean, we've got such an amazing, you know, system of education here. We've got such smart people. We work pretty hard, and I think there's no reason why Innovation Australia can't be world leading in terms of that brand.
Absolutely. I should just add though, because we're revenue based or we're debt based products at the moment, like we do need you to be having some revenue. So we say sort of a minimum of $15,000 a month. If you're generating that, that's when we can start to really help. Prior to that, you know, happy to open the discussion and help guide you for your planning out in the future. But yeah, we do need to have some revenue to be able to work closely.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the same kind of thing as if you were going, I mean, it's not the same, but if you were going to the bank for a loan, you'd need to show that you can pay it back. And I guess that's the revenue-based finance approach, is show us that you can pay it back at some point.
Exactly.
And I was going to say, like, for anyone who's kind of earlier than that, just a little plug, come and hang out with us at HEX. We're very much about scaling up people who haven't started yet or who are pre-revenue. And then another sort of like, I guess, Tractor question. This is from LinkedIn user. Does that also include, do you ever review things for social enterprise or gig economy workers, that kind of thing? Probably not the revenue, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we need is companies that can grow, so we can help with that growth. So like a not-for-profit, I think we're like, for example, we've talked to a few not-for-profits that hasn't really been able to fit. So we sort of kind of need companies that are growing at around 3% a month. And so if the plan is to sort of just make ends meet to solve a problem, then probably isn't a good fit. But I'm a strong believer in profit for purpose. So I think if you're building a profitable company, then you can create much more impact. So yeah, 100%. Like we all have everyone in the team, actually at our last offsite, we went around the table and talked about everyone's passions, like me with women founders, and all of us have a passion in environment or in, we've all got impact passions. So our eyes light up whenever there's impact added to the equation, for sure.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's, we're technically I don't identify as a social enterprise, but we're for impact. That's my kind of startup symbol identification. But yeah, no, I mean, HEX is a for impact company, but I'm very much also of the belief that like there's no harm in growing the business, making money, and then deploying our resources in a way that feels good to me as a founder and to the team that surrounds us. So very cool. And so I'm curious about, I'm going to go back to you personally for a second in your CEOing. What do you think were your key skills and mindset changes that you needed to have to go from someone who was like on the tools, great operator, to leader? Like what did that journey look like?
Yeah, it's definitely been something in my recent thinking and over the Christmas break, where I felt like, okay, I really have to lift out of the weeds now, because I'm naturally find a gap, go jump in it, fix it. So it's like yourself, like it's hard, but so I think about getting out of the weeds, and I love to trust my people and empower them. So that's really great. And then I think about just being there enough to feel their pain, like, or their fun, or like I said, the one sales call on the village. Like I want to be in there with them enough that I can empathize with where they're at, but I can't be in there too much, because then I'm not leading them. So then, the focus is on empowering them, inspiring them, thinking longer term. Like if I'm not, and Matt's very, very good at this, but if we're not looking ahead at the headwinds that are coming or the tailwinds that are coming, we're doing service to our people. So that's the shift.
Yeah, it's I think that's a really great takeaway. Just be there enough so you can empathize with how they're feeling. I think the risk with some leaders who become very a bit almost egocentric and very up and out, kind of looking outside the business all the time, like they actually get separated from their team and they don't know. And I think we see evidence of that in big tech companies. I won't name any names, or even big corporates where the bosses don't seem to know what's going on. So I think
many names spring to mind. Yes.
You think of some names. It's like Matt Elon Musk. Anyway, sorry. So Rakul's got a fabulous question here. Thank you, Rakul, for asking it, which is actually around, first-time founders, and what an exciting time to be a founder, Rakul.
Yeah.
But what are your tips to get better with execution? Like, I mean, we might try something, try it again. How can you start to incrementally improve on that?
Well, I think it's the fact that you're asking the question, you're already focused on it. So I think that's really excellent. And it's just keeping that focus, like just reminding yourself that, I'm trying to improve here, or here. The other thing is you can't improve everything at once. This is something I sometimes feel guilty of. I'm trying to be better mum, better thing, better, fitter, healthier. It's like, can't do it all at once. It's really good just to focus on what are the things I think I really want to improve on at the moment.
Oh my goodness. I really feel like my shoulders just dropped, like, it's so true though. I think the temptation is to see all of the gaps and everything you want to fix and everything you want to level up. And because most founders tend to be optimistic people, high achieving people, like we want to do it all, right?
Yeah.
So, gosh, what great advice. Thank you so much for that. Can I ask, do you take that on yourself? I've got
a very good friend of mine who keeps reminding me, so I do forget, but I am reminded regularly. So yes.
And is in that sort of frame of mind, like having people around you to keep you accountable and keep your well-being together, how do you sort of think about the way that you spend your time in general? I don't want to do necessarily work-life balance stuff, but because I don't believe in that personally, I think it's work-life integration.
Oh, well, I can tell you some stuff, but it will just sound so blah. I think I'm very conscious at the moment, especially, but over time I've been conscious of like that your top 5 people that are you're influencing. You are the sum of your top 5 people that are around you. So I constantly think about that, like, who is it that I'm listening to the most? Who are the top 5 that I'm listening to the most, and are they the right people? And like, I've made some changes, not saying sorry we're not friends anymore, but just shifting sort of time, energy, listening power to those that I don't think are the right 5 to lift me.
Yeah, I think it's a very diplomatic way of curating, I guess, the people. It's the voices that are in your head, right? Like the people that you chat to. And honestly, I've found that sometimes you almost get hangover mentors, like people that were your supporters when maybe 2-3 years ago, or and you still have a relationship with them, which is wonderful, but the advice that they have for you now isn't actually what you need.
Exactly.
So that relationship then changes to be, well, let's just have a coffee and hang out, rather than
exactly that
advice.
key advisor. Exactly.
Yeah. So just maybe a lesson for us all to keep refreshing, like,
and just being conscious of it. Like, who am I listening to, and is it right? Like, should I like it? And maybe they're beautiful, amazing people, but maybe their values and where they're going, it just isn't aligned with yours, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I tend to think, like, someone gave me this analogy a while ago, which I have adopted as mine, but it's, imagine yourself wearing a Velcro suit and people are just going to throw stuff at you all day long. And then it's your job at the end of the day to stand up and like brush off your suit.
Wow.
This sticks, that sticks, but nothing else sticks. Like, and so it's kind of, it's your job to do that. It's not actually anyone else's job.
That is awesome. I love that. What a strong visual.
Yeah, I know. I feel like, love a good analogy. And anything to do with fashion, we'll add that in.
A Velcro suit. That's great.
Okay, a couple of great questions coming in from like Bruce and Hinda. I'll come to you. So I'm going to start with Bruce's question. Actually, did you find that leadership is something that was natural for you, or is it something you practice?
I think it's mostly natural. So I am the eldest of like my sister and I'm the eldest. My childhood sort of led me to have to take on responsibility early, and so I feel like it just from really young I've had to be a bit of a leader, and so but now I'm trying to not just lean on that but actually get some professional rigor around it as well.
Yeah, a bit of structure. And I mean, for those people who might not feel like they're born leaders, like that narrative where it's like you were born a leader, do you believe it can be taught? Do you believe it can be learned?
Yes,
leadership
100%.
skills?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, me too. I think that there's definitely, sometimes we think that that's not for us, but there's always a way, as you said, surround yourself with great people and sort of practice those skills.
I think also self-awareness is a massive, I think self-awareness is a huge part of learning to be a leader, like learning what you are good at and what you're not naturally, and then where those gaps are, like finding that extra help.
And do you, in terms of self-awareness, is that like something that you do journal, or do you kind of just take a long walk in the morning? Like, how do you sort of, what practices do you have to do self-reflection?
Yeah, I've been on such a journey in the last few years, personally. Yeah, so I do all of those things: journaling, big long walks, podcasts, audio. You should see my list of audiobooks. It's like self-help, like meditation as well. I think really
nice. I've started volunteering with my dog. Her name's Pippa, and we do therapy dog volunteering. So I take her out to, like, I don't know, hospitals and events and that kind of thing, and she goes around and just is cute, and that's her entire job. But when I'm there, like, people are like, "Oh, you have the best job in the world, taking care of your dog," and I'm just like, "Yes, this is what I do. I am Jeanette who takes care of dogs." And it's just like, it kind of grounds me and centers me to say, don't take yourself too seriously. Life is just, just be there with the dog, be present.
So, yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Anyway, now I'm conscious of time, and I don't want to, like, spend your whole lunch break with us, because you need to eat at some point as well. But just this leadership stuff, there's so many good questions, and I think a follow-up from Bruce is just what is the best way to learn to become a leader in your opinion? It's a big question, Bruce. Asking the tough ones today.
It's interesting because I'm such a certificate person. If I'm going to do something new, I have to get the certificate. Like, and so, like when I was in my early 20s, and I realized no one taught me about money. Like my parents didn't teach me, schools didn't teach me. I didn't know anything about money. And so I went and did a master's of finance. Like extreme.
You couldn't just like read a book about it or something. You had to go master's. Yeah.
No, that's right. I couldn't just pick up Barefoot Investor. I had to spend 3 years. So I think that's extreme, but there's so much I think, you could do an MBA at the extreme, and then, there would be so many kind of masterclasses, and I think attending these things is great, and just, hearing from current leaders, and lots of different ways.
Totally. I think for me, building out a leadership style is actually figuring out that you are a leader. And I mean, I've got like this model which I use in my head, which is kind of a 3 levels of leadership. It's like, what's my self leadership? How do I lead myself? So you started with your reflection, your journals, you're walking, like making sure that you're leading yourself. And then the next layer is like, what's my inner circle leadership? Who are the few people I can influence to do things? And then finally, it's what's the bigger, broader global picture? How do I take that bigger? So it's a very different thing from being a manager. It's much more about who am I and how am I going to put that into the world? I thought
that's fantastic. I love that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to do last call for questions because there's some great ones coming up, and I don't want to miss anyone. So if you want to get your question and get it in now. And I'm going to get back up to, I think we're going to move into more some founder stuff. So Hind has a great question. What drives you to keep going? Like when things feel hard, when you're starting, you've got no traction, the tractor's got no gas in it. Like, how do you actually start going and keep going?
Great question. A tractor, we've been very lucky since the minute we started. It's just been a tractor rocket. We're just trying to hang on as it goes. So that's easy. Well, it's good. We always say it's good problems to have. We need more people, we need more money, we need, it's all happening. But occasional butler, there was a time where it just like we were a year into this thing and we still hadn't got a customer, and it was really awful. Like I did get really depressed and bit paralyzed. Like I do remember sitting at the desk and just couldn't even type, like just sat there. It was awful. And then the thing that turned it was someone, I don't even remember how this came about, but someone suggested I talk to Julia Timms, who was the co-founder of Find a Babysitter, which was one of the only other marketplaces around at the time. And just talking to her was like massive. Like she helped me reset my expectations and kind of like I could breathe again after just that one meeting, and then I could just break it down and start trialing little things, and eventually I found our growth hack and off we went. So that's why one of my key tips is get advice, get it early and get it always, because you can get so stuck in your own head and challenge, and you cannot solve things on your own all the time.
No, I mean it's crucial to give something oxygen. And I know that even just talking to one or two other people who are going through similar things, managing teams, managing their runway, managing their own mental health and their own expectations, and particularly other founders, I found that to be one of the most valuable things in my personal journey. So that's great advice. I think we're going to end on this one because it's a really good question, and I suspect it might be from someone who's planning to go and do some pitching at some point. But if you get the question about why you, or why are you the right person to solve this problem, or why are you the right person for the role? How do you want to hear them answering that question?
Definitely a personal connection to it, because this sort of goes back to the last question as well. Like if you are not passionate about it, then when times get tough, like how are you actually going to get yourself out of bed and keep going? So it's having that personal connection 100%. Like you could be doing an insurance startup and you've only ever worked in fashion, doesn't matter. If you're so passionate because you've had an lived experience, or you just know that there's a big someone was talking to me last night. So I've got no experience in this area, but I something in me just wants to solve this for the world. Like I just can't, it just doesn't leave me. I want to solve this problem. So that's it for me.
Yeah, it's like I've been thinking about this for years. You know?
Yeah, it's a life purpose.
Yeah. And I think that's such a it's such a privilege that we get as founders and entrepreneurs and leaders, is that we get to choose what we're spending our time on. And is it figuring out whether it's something that could be our life's work and a legacy we want to leave. So that's such a beautiful piece of advice. Now, Jodie, this has been like the highlight of my week, and I really have loved talking to you. And I hope
everyone say that to all the guests, Jeanette.
Oh, I don't. It's been great to. Sorry, if the other guests are watching, you're great too. No, it's been wonderful, and also I just miss catching up with you. So we should do it again next year, maybe over a long walk.
We definitely have to.
But thank you for your time, and for everyone who's joined in, please join me in thanking Jodie for her wonderful insights and advice. If you are looking to get some funding for your business, you know, Tractor is there, and they're open to chatting to lots of different people. Don't let necessarily that revenue number scare you. If you just want to open the conversation early, it's never too early. Jodie, I'm speaking for you. Hopefully
absolutely. We want founders to know what options they have. It's all about optionality. So make sure you know all the options. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I went for a blended finance model, and that's worked nicely for us at the moment. So, but Jodie, I'm going to say last word to you. Any final motivational words of advice for the future or the current CEOs out there?
I think it's absolutely the time for women leaders. Like you've given me so much to think about, even in this half an hour, 45 minutes, Jeanette. So I feel inspired by you. Thank you. I'm going to think about my Velcro suit now. I feel like this really is the time for women leaders, but also I feel like it really is the time for technology companies to start. Like this is the time. We can do it with like inexpensive tools. We can get started. There's so much change needed in the world, and I honestly believe it's never been easier. So don't let any of that fear mongering stop you.
Yeah, don't let this moment pass you by. If you've got the idea, if you've got the drive, if you're ready to build something, do something, either in your company or in your own company. We want to see it because the world needs you now. So love that, Jodie. Thank you so much, Jodie. It's been wonderful to chat. And if anyone's watching, you can watch this again on live stream. It's all captured on YouTube. So see you soon for a walk around the park.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Thank you for those dialing in. HEX is EdTech. We're all about empowering early stage founders. We're all about empowering the next generation of leaders. So check out our website and roll the trailer.
Like Singapore's event of the century.